How are you guys? All right, all right, all right. No, for real though, how are you guys? You guys good? Give me a thumbs up if you're doing good, thumbs down if you're bad, and if you're in the middle, just give me a little waggle. Wow, okay. Sad in this section. This section, we've got mostly thumbs up, that's good. Mostly thumbs up, that's a little waggle. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, little waggle. All right, cool. Well, guys, I've missed you guys. I'm not going to lie. I've missed you guys. I don't know if you have missed Garage, but I have missed Garage. I have missed hanging out with you guys. After the couple of weeks, I mean, it was pretty hard for me not to have kind of my regular rhythm and my regular routine of like, oh, let's do small groups. Let's have a Sunday night. We took a couple weeks off. So, yeah, now we're back and things are back to a regular rhythm. I believe at this point, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I believe at this point, every person in this room has started the next school year. What? Oh, you start tomorrow. Wow, okay. Well, then by tomorrow, everybody in this room will have started the next school year. And so that's great. Now we're all at that point, we're all kind of figuring out what our routines look like for starting a new school year, whether you, right, we all moved up in the grade, right? Everything's a little bit different than it was last year, because it's not last year, it's this year, it's right now. So everything's a little bit different than it used to be. And so we're all starting to figure out how we're going to get this routine and this rhythm going, right? We're waking up early, we're going to school, we have to set our alarms, right? Maybe you have homework already, or you have to like, I don't know how you guys do homework these days, but it doesn't seem to be on paper. It seems to be on a computer. So I don't know what that looks like, but like you do these things to get ready to start your school year. And so we're probably all doing something a little bit different, trying to make that routine normal, that rhythm normal. You may be a person that sets their clothes out the night before school, right? Some of you have already picked out your outfit for the week, right? You've already got all 5 days laid out in your head. Maybe you got them set out in your room or whatever, and you're ready for this week. You've got your alarm set, your homework's ready, your bag's packed, you know where you're going to lunch. Like you're that kind of person in setting up your rhythms and your routines for the school year. That might be you. That was not me. Okay, that was not me at all. I was the worst at starting a new rhythm, especially at the beginning of the school year. I could not do it. I'd never have been like a morning person. You can ask Megan later tonight. I'm still not a morning person. I hate waking up in the morning. It's the worst. I don't want to do it, and I do it every day. And I could never get myself to like make myself get up at 6 a.m. I could never do that. It never happened for me. So if you're like me, you're kind of a person that I have no idea what I'm wearing tomorrow. Maybe you don't even know what you're doing after Garage. Maybe you don't even know how you're getting home from Garage. That's me. I was never a person that was able to just be like, oh, I've got my whole week planned out. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly what I'm going to wear. I know exactly where I'm. Planners, never used it. I started to use it now. It sort of helps. I would suggest you start doing that if you haven't. It's a good habit, but I still suck at it. So, what I'm saying here is at the beginning of the school year, whether you're an adult like me, or you're a high school student like you are, or you're like Michelle and she comes in here and makes all these lights look freaking amazing every week, whether you're anywhere in this like standard of life, the fall puts everybody in the same boat. We're all in the same boat here because I have to now change my rhythm because school's in session. I can't plan things on certain nights because school's in session. You guys can't plan things because school's in session, right? All of us are in the same boat of making this new rhythm, this new routine, this new life that we're creating in the school year, right? And so here's the thing. Why are we talking about rhythms? Why are we talking about routines? Why are we talking about all this new school year talk? The reason we're talking about it is because we're starting a new series, and I think this series is pretty sweet. I've been mulling over this series since before summer camp, trying to figure out when's the right time to make this series come out, and when's the right time for us to hear what a mundane miracle is. And so we're starting this series for the next few weeks, Mundane Miracles. And I don't think any of us regularly use the word mundane in our daily or weekly vocab. We don't say that word a lot. And so we don't know what it means all the time, and we probably don't know how it's properly used. But I've been, since then, thinking about how is this word going to figure its way into our lives. And so we're going to tell you what mundane means. So mundane means lacking interest or excitement. It's dull. Many of you right now might be thinking, this is mundane. And I get that. Okay, mundane, lacking interest or excitement, dull, boring, monotone. But miracle, what does miracle mean, right? Miracle is an effect, it's on the screen, an effect or extraordinary event in the physical world that surpasses all known human or natural powers and is ascribed to be a supernatural cause. That's just what the dictionary says. So what does mundane miracle look like? How are those words working together? Here's the thing. I believe there's so much mundane aspects of our life. Lacking excitement, lacking interest, dull. Going to school is mundane. Going to practice every day to do the same workouts is mundane. Seeing the same people every single day is mundane. Coming home to do your homework and you have to do your chores and you have to do all these things at home, it's mundane. There's a lot of mundane in our life, and I think there's a lot of mundane in our faith. It's kind of dull. It's not exciting. The only time we really experience anything other than mundane in our faith journey is when we're at camp or we're at like something super cool. We're at a worship night or something. We got baptisms coming up and we're just fired up, right? But every other time is just mundane, boring, lacking interest. So in this series, my goal is, and my hope for you guys is that mundane miracles mean something different than what it did before. Life is not mundane. Life is a miracle. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at different aspects of our own lives, maybe do some self-reflecting and going, this may be mundane, and this used to be mundane and boring and dull to me, but I've looked at it differently now, and it's a miracle. How many of us have heard the phrase, man, it's a miracle that Man, it's a miracle that I made it to class on time. Man, it's a miracle I passed this test. Man, it's a miracle that I even showed up to garage tonight. We've all heard that saying before, but what that phrase and what that saying is, there's a miracle in that story. That is a miracle moment that you experienced. But we brush it off as mundane, boring, dull. My hope is in this series that we get to look at our own lives and we get to look at Scripture and say, some of these things used to be mundane. Some of these things looked not exciting, didn't really grab my interest at all. But hopefully at the end of this series, we get to look at those moments and go, but there's a miracle in there. So let's get into it. So if we're talking about mundane and miracles, let's get into a mundane story. So in this story, we're going to be in Mark chapter 5. And this is something that I forget to tell because it's sometimes forgotten. This is sort of a mundane miss of information. So Mark, the book of Mark, was not a follower of Jesus. Mark was not one of the 12 disciples that walked around with Jesus for 3 years. Mark was a guy that followed Peter after Jesus walked with Jesus, or Peter walked with Jesus. So for 3 years, Peter is seeing all these amazing things that Jesus is doing, and eventually, after Jesus is in heaven, is gone to heaven, Peter's like, I got to tell somebody about this. And so for the next 15, 20 years, Mark followed Peter. And Mark was writing down these stories that we read in the Bible. Okay? So Mark is writing these stories down. In this book, Mark is kind of broken into 3 sections. First section is, who is Jesus? Second section is, what does it mean that Jesus is the Messiah? And then the third section is how Jesus became the king. In the first section, that's where we are. Who is Jesus? Is all the stories that we've heard. How Jesus had all authority in heaven and on earth to heal people, to save people, to forgive sins. We get to see the power of Jesus in the first section. Who is this guy that is doing these amazing things? And these stories we've probably heard 100 times. We've heard several of these stories 1,000,000 times. We've heard these stories so much that so many of these stories feel mundane. When I hear a story about Jesus doing some spectacular thing, we actually, because we've heard it so many times, we actually think it's just mundane. It's not exciting. That's just what Jesus does. It's nothing new. I've heard that story. My goal is to change that perspective tonight. Give you a different way to look at these stories we've heard, read, and looked into 100 times and not make them mundane. So in Mark chapter 5, verse 24, it's going to be on the screen, and we're going to kind of run through them here just so you know, Johnny. So it says in verse 24, so Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. Keep going, Johnny. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that the power had gone out of him and turned around to the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? And his disciples, you see these people crowding against you. His disciples answered, and yet you ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Who's heard that story before? Who's heard that story more than 5 times? Who's heard that story more than 10 times? Who's heard that story more than 20 times? These stories we've heard maybe are mundane because we've heard them so much, but in this story, we have a miracle. So here's what we see from the beginning of the story, and it's actually the end of a mundane life for this woman. For 12 years, she's been suffering, hurting, bleeding. Talk about a mundane life. For 12 years in a row, she wakes up hurting, suffering, bleeding, seeing doctor after doctor to try and get better, and time again, she grows worse. She was never getting better. Her life could not have been more mundane and boring and dull and non-exciting. Knowing that for 12 years, it never got better. That she'd spent all she had to these doctors to heal her, to fix her, to make her better, to enjoy life, to have freedom, but can't. Now, how many of us have felt like that before? That you can't get up, you can't keep going, you are hurt, you're suffering, it's hard, and you can't get better. I have. Down and out, can't get up, out of the game, out of cards to play. She's broke. She can't pay for another doctor. She's tried everything she can, and for 12 years it says, no, you're not getting better. So instead, one more day of mundane life. Ready for one more day of suffering. Ready for one more day of hurting. Ready for one more day of bleeding. We know that feeling pretty well. I would say we all have that feeling sometimes. There's nothing we can do. So we just say, this is my life now. Mundane, boring, suffering. But something changed in this story that shifted everything. And we read about it. We're going to go through it. It says, when she heard about Jesus. When she heard about Jesus, something in her mind, in this story, changed. For 12 years, she's been looking for something to be different. And it says, when she had heard about Jesus, that's where the story shifts. Because at this time, she had heard about who Jesus was. He was walking around healing people. He was doing what he was doing that we hear about so often in the Bible, in the Gospels, about these amazing miracles that Jesus performs to heal people. And she's heard of that name. And when he comes to town and she saw him and she heard he was here, something changed. She had hope in who Jesus was. She had heard about this guy named Jesus, and she had hope in who he was and what he's capable to do. If I just touch his clothes, then I'll be healed. Talk about a mundane miracle. The life she's had and she's living currently in that moment of just suffering, can't help herself. But she had hope in who Jesus was, and she gave her final kind of help. She reached out and touched the clothes, and she was healed. At this moment, this is courageous and just a big moment for her, because she had so much failure in trying to get help, because there could be so much that goes wrong. It doesn't work, and embarrassment and shame. But what if it works? Man, if I just touch his clothes, maybe I'll be healed. And so what we know from the story is she was immediately healed from the bleeding and the suffering. This is the miracle she had been hoping for, the change in her life that she needed. She'd been waiting for years, and it just happened right in front of her. It wasn't over time, it was right there. And something really cool happens, right? When I read these stories and I think about what Jesus is going to say back to these people, or what he says to the Pharisees, it blows my mind every time. He says something so cool, because he felt the power leave his body. He feels the power leave his body. He's in the middle of a crowd, and all these people are like, who touched my clothes? And the disciples are like, you're in the middle of town, everyone's here. I'm touching you, Jesus. What do you mean, who touched you? But of course, someone had touched you, Jesus. There's a ton of people in here. We can't see who touched you and the power went to. I don't know that. But eventually, as we read on, the lady was trembling with fear. Because Jesus is like looking around for who took my power. And she comes forward and she tells Jesus the whole truth. The truth of what just happened to her. And Jesus says the most tender and profound thing. He says, "Daughter, it is your faith that has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." The thing that I think stands out here is when Jesus says it's your faith. It's your faith that has healed you. This lady had experienced a mundane miracle because she believed in who Jesus was and what he was capable to do. And she believed about him and in him that he could. I think that actually pretty well works with these baptisms this last weekend. They're like today and yesterday is like, when you accept Jesus into your life, Jesus is present, the Holy Spirit is present, but it is your decision to follow him. So all of the people that got baptized today, like, you're free from suffering because of your decision to follow Jesus. The last question I have and last thought I want to leave you guys on, band, you guys can come back up, is how many mundane miracles have you missed? Because you have chosen not to believe in who Jesus is. How many times have there been something in your life that Jesus has done, but you just write it off as something that's mundane and it's coincidence and it happens to a lot of people? How many mundane miracles have we missed because we have chosen not to believe in who Jesus is? That's where we're going in this series, is looking at these stories that might be mundane and might be boring because we've heard them a million times. And Jesus does a miracle, but guess what? Miracles are awesome. And I believe miracles still happen. I know they happen in my life. I know they happen in yours. But how often do I get to actually experience that miracle if I choose to not believe who he is from? Pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for bringing us back to Garage, bringing us back to a new school year where we get to make new friends, we get to study, we get to play new sports, we get to do all these new experiences, God. But please, please, do not let us forget that you are in the middle of our lives, in the mundaneness of our life, in the boring of our life, in the dullness of our life, that there is still space for you to do a miracle. Help us to see those moments, God. We love you. It's in your name we pray.
For you Run to him tonight. No eye has seen, no ear has heard it. What you're about to do, my heart is ready, my soul is stirring. God, you're about to move, you better, so much better. And I'm running after you, you better, so much better. Oh. Wanna meet with you more than Sundays. I wanna know more than just my mother's faith, 'cause that's not enough to get through the rough. Oh, I need a Monday morning faith. I wanna hear you in more than just one way. Show your voice in all of the mundane things. You're in the in-between. You're in my everything. all that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offering. Oh, let my worship be more than just singing. When did music become a religious thing? Let these songs be what they're meant to be. The sound of your church awakening. Help my heart to keep up with the heavens, where the angels sing 24/7 praise. You're more than enough to get through my rough. You're teaching me Monday morning faith. That's all I really need. My soul sings in the morning. I love the King and He loves me. All that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offering. Your mercy's new, your mercy's new every morning. I come alive as you're calling. All that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offering. Hell's not scared of a Sunday faith if it only leads to an empty praise. What really makes darkness right is when the saints arise and praise in quiet on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. To know you, to love you, to choose you first on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. To see you, behold you, and worship, sing it. Hallelujah, holy, holy, glory to the King of Kings. Yeah, hallelujah, holy, holy, all honor and glory belong to you. My soul sings in the morning. I love the King and He loves me. All that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offering. Lay it down. Your mercy's new every morning. I come alive as you're calling. All that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offering. Every day. This is where that relationship starts, right here. In this moment when you decide to lay down your life for Him. Sing this last part out together. My soul sings in the morning. I love the King and He loves me. All that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offerings. Your mercy's new every morning. I come alive as you're calling. All that I'm compelled to bring is my everyday offering.
Yeah. So I don't know what just happened because I didn't tell her that we were doing mundane miracles or starting to look for those moments in her life, but that's what this song is about. So here's the thing. Every week or tomorrow, this is statistically true. If you start a habit on a Monday, you're more likely to finish it through the habit building process. So tomorrow, let's look for some mundane miracles. Sound good to you? Sound good to me? You guys are going to break out into your little powwows, and we'll get out of here. We are going to do kind of a light after hours at Sonic. So 8:30, we're out of here. I love you all. You're loved, you're prayed for, you're accepted here just the way you are. I love you.